Hey, I'm Emma. Welcome to Emma's Betrayal Stories now. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories aren't rushed. They're the kind you sit with. Today's story comes with an update and my own personal opinions throughout the story. Let me know in the comments if you agree or see it differently. Let's begin.
My sister tried to embarrass me at my wedding, so I invited her ex to dance and steal the show. The microphone was already in Nadia's hand when I realized she'd found the DJ. 1 second I was laughing with my new husband, Owen, because someone's toddler had waddled onto the dance floor like he owned it, and the next I heard that bright, rehearsed tone my sister uses when she's about to make a room choose between awkward silence and fake laughter. The room smelled like warm butter from the dinner rolls and the sweet bite of spilled champagne. My dress felt heavier than it had all day, like it had absorbed every hug and every photo and every small stress. Nadia tapped the mic twice, tap tap, while staring directly at me, smiling like we were sharing a joke. I watched my mother's face pinch with that familiar, please don't ruin this, tension, and my stomach dropped because my mother wasn't looking at Nadia like she was proud. She was looking at her like she was afraid of what she might do, and she was looking at me like it was my job to absorb it. I didn't move at first. That sounds pathetic, but it's the truth. My feet were planted beside the head table, my hand still looped in Owen's, and my brain did this fast inventory of options. Walk over and snatch the mic. Scene. Ask the DJ to cut her off. Scene. Smile and pray. Possible disaster. Nadia lifted her free hand and said, Okay, everyone, I promise I'll be quick. I just couldn't let my sister get married without telling you all who she really is. That last part came with a pause, the kind that invites anticipation. A few people chuckled politely. Owen squeezed my hand once, gentle, like a question. I leaned in and whispered, whatever happens, don't say anything. My voice sounded calm, but my pulse was in my throat. Nadia's eyes flicked to Owen, then back to me, and her smile sharpened. She was doing it. At my wedding. In front of everyone. It started, like most of our stuff does, long before a wedding venue and a white dress. It started with Nadia always needing to be the brightest thing in any room, and my family treating that like a personality quirk instead of a problem. I'm the younger sister by 2 years. On paper, we're close enough that we should have been built-in best friends. In real life, it's always felt like we're in some quiet competition I didn't agree to enter. Nadia has always been the one who speaks first, jokes loudest, cries the most dramatically, and somehow walks away with everyone comforting her. I was the one who understood, who didn't take things personally, who kept the peace. Which is a nice way of saying I was trained to swallow things to make other people comfortable. When Owen proposed, it wasn't some flashy public thing. It was us, in our tiny apartment kitchen, flour on the counter because we'd tried and failed to make pasta from scratch. He had this nervous softness to him when he pulled the ring out, like he couldn't believe he was allowed to ask me. I cried into his shoulder and said yes, so fast my voice cracked. Nadia's reaction, when I called her, a pause. Then, oh my God, finally. I was starting to worry you'd end up alone with a cat. I laughed because that's what I do. I made it a joke. I even told myself she didn't mean it the way it landed. But then the wedding planning started, and Nadia turned into a whole separate project I had to manage, like a vendor with a bad attitude and a family discount. She offered to be my maid of honor before I even asked anyone. Obviously, it'll be me, she said, like it was a fact, not a role. I had already decided it would be my best friend, Claire, because Claire has been in my life through actual hard things and never once made them about herself. Nadia sulked for 3 days. My mother called me to say, just give her something important. You know how she is. That sentence, you know how she is, has covered for Nadia for our entire lives. So I gave her a reading during the ceremony and a toast at the reception. Safe. Structured. Controlled. In my head, that would keep her from freelancing. It did not. 2 months before the wedding, Nadia started little accidents. She forgot to send the bridesmaid dress measurements until the last possible day, then cried that the tailor hated her body. She told our aunties I was being bridezilla because I asked everyone to arrive on time for family photos. She kept joking about Owen being too good for me in front of people who didn't know us well enough to understand it was a dig. Owen would smile politely, then later ask me, "Does she like you?" And I'd say, "That's just Nadia." Like it explained anything. Here's the part that matters. Nadia's ex, Marco, used to be the one person who could cut through her performance. They dated for 3 years in their 20s.
He's not some villain. He's actually decent. Quiet. The kind of guy who listens.
Nadia hated that he didn't play her games. When they broke up, she told everyone he was emotionally unavailable. What she meant was he didn't worship her chaos. Marco and Owen know each other through work, same industry, different companies. Not close friends, but they've crossed paths for years. When Owen and I sent out invites, Marco got one because he's in that wider circle and because we didn't want our wedding to feel like we were picking sides in old breakups. Nadia found out and lost it. "You invited him?" she hissed on the phone. "To my sister's wedding?" 2 hours, I corrected, already exhausted. "And yes, he's not your enemy." "He is absolutely my enemy," she said, then softened her voice immediately like she'd remembered she was talking to me.
"Please."
"It'll ruin my night." That phrase, my night, told me everything. Not your wedding day. Not your happiness. My night. Owen and I talked about it. Owen said, "If you want him uninvited, I'll do it." I didn't. Something in me was tired of shaping my life around Nadia's emotions. I said, "He can come. Nadia can deal." But I also started paying attention. I watched Nadia closely in the weeks leading up to the wedding. She'd make comments about my dress like, "It's brave you chose that neckline," or "At least you'll look different." She asked the photographer if we were doing any funny shots, then laughed too hard. She kept telling people she had a toast plan that would make everyone cry. The hair on my arms would lift every time she said it. A week before the wedding, Claire pulled me aside at my bachelorette dinner and said, "I don't want to freak you out, but Nadia's been asking questions."
Like what?
Like what kind of mic the DJ used, how long the toast slot was, whether the DJ could play a slideshow, whether the venue had a screen. My stomach did that slow, sinking thing. Why would she need a slideshow?
I asked.
Claire's mouth tightened. That's what I'm saying. So I did the thing I never do. I planned. I spoke to the DJ myself. I told him, politely, that no one touches the mic except him, Claire and Owen. I asked him to keep the speech slots tight and to cut off anyone who went rogue. He agreed. I spoke to the venue coordinator about access to the AV equipment. I made sure the laptop used for photos was mine with my password. I didn't tell Nadia any of this. I just quietly locked doors. And then I called Marco. I felt ridiculous doing it, like I was starring in a petty movie. But it wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about a lever Nadia couldn't control.
Marco answered, sounding surprised.
"Hey, everything okay?" I stared at my kitchen wall while Owen washed dishes behind me, trying to be quiet. "This is going to sound weird," I said. "But can I ask you something without you thinking I'm insane?" He laughed once, low. "Try me." I told him, carefully, that I suspected Nadia might pull something at the wedding. I didn't go into childhood history. I just said, "She's been hinting at a toast that isn't kind. I want to protect the night." There was a pause. "What do you need?" he asked. I swallowed. If she tries to embarrass me during her toast, I want a distraction. Something that shifts the room. Something joyful. Marco was quiet for a beat. Then he exhaled like he'd been waiting years to hear someone say Nadia's behavior out loud. "You want me to what? Stand up and object?" "No," I said quickly. "God, no. There's a dance later. There's a part where the DJ invites everyone to join, and then there's a moment where it's kind of open. If you are willing to step in and ask her to dance, just one, like a normal, polite dance." "You want me to dance with her," he said, and I could hear the disbelief. "Only if she starts something," I said. "Not to humiliate her. Just to pull the attention off me." Another pause. Then Marco said quietly, "Is Owen okay with this?" I looked at Owen, who had stopped washing dishes and was listening without pretending he wasn't. He nodded once, slow. "Owen knows," I said. "He thinks it's smart." Marco made a sound like half a laugh, half a sigh. "Your sister is something else," he said. "Okay. If she starts something, I'll step in. But I'm not doing it to punish her. I'm doing it because you asked, and because your wedding shouldn't be a stage for her." I almost cried from the relief of someone taking it seriously.
So yeah,
That's the setup for why Marco was at my wedding, sitting on the groom's side, in a navy suit, looking mildly uncomfortable like he'd rather be anywhere else. Which brings me back to Nadia, holding the mic like it was a trophy.
she started with a story about us as kids. Fine.
People smiled. Then she shifted her tone. "And I just want to say," Nadia said, voice syrupy, "Layla has always been determined. Even when she's not the smartest in the room." A little laughter. The kind people do when they don't know if they're supposed to. Nadia looked around, enjoying it. "Like when she failed her driver's test twice and cried for a week," she said. My cheeks burned. Owen's hand tightened around mine. I heard someone at table 5 whisper, "Oh," like they felt secondhand embarrassment. And then there was the time she tried to start a baking business and burned an entire batch of cupcakes, remember? Nadia's eyes flicked to my mother, who gave a tight smile that looked like pain. She's always had these little phases. My vision tunneled. I could feel blood rushing in my ears. I could also feel something else. Anger, clean and sharp. Nadia raised the mic again. "But the funniest part? Owen, I have to tell you this, you probably don't know, Layla used to have this huge crush on Marco." The room went weirdly still, like the air itself paused. I felt Owen's head turn slightly toward Nadia, not angry, just startled. My stomach lurched. That was not true. I'd met Marco like 3 times when they were dating.
He was always polite.
That was it. This was Nadia trying to plan a story right here in front of my husband on my wedding night. Nadia smiled like she'd just thrown a match. And then, from across the room, I saw Marco stand. He didn't look dramatic. He didn't storm. He just rose, smoothed his jacket, and walked toward Nadia with the calm of someone crossing a street. Nadia's smile faltered for half a second when she saw him coming. She tightened her grip on the mic, like she might swing it. Marco stopped a respectful distance away and said, into the mic stand that Nadia was still holding, "Hey, can I borrow that for a second?" Nadia's face flashed, confusion, annoyance, something like fear. "No," she said, too sharp. Marco didn't react. He just looked at her like she was being unreasonable in a grocery store line. "Okay," he said simply. Then he turned to the DJ and lifted a hand. The DJ, bless him, stepped in, took the mic from Nadia like it was standard procedure, and placed it back on its stand. Nadia opened her mouth like she was about to protest, and Marco cut in, smiling softly. "Nadia," he said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, but not a performance. "Come dance with me." The room exhaled. People laughed. Not at me, but at the sudden shift. Someone went, "Oh," because adults become teenagers around romantic tension. Nadia froze. For one horrible second, I thought she'd refuse and spin it into another speech. Then Nadia's eyes flicked to the crowd, to my parents, to me. She smiled, tight, controlled, and said, "Sure." Marco offered his hand. Nadia took it like she was taking a business card from someone she hated. The DJ, sensing the moment, slid into a slower song, something safe and familiar. Marco led her onto the dance floor. And just like that, Nadia's plan derailed. People watched, fascinated. Nadia kept her smile pasted on, but her shoulders were rigid. Marco leaned in and said something I couldn't hear. Nadia's eyes widened slightly. Then she laughed, forced, and kept dancing. Owen leaned down and whispered, "That was genius." I nodded, but my hands were shaking so hard I pressed them against the table edge to steady myself. My heart was pounding, but the humiliation Nadia had tried to pour over me like hot oil didn't land. It slid off and hit the floor instead. Marco danced with her for exactly one song. Not longer. Not enough to look like a statement. Just enough to swallow the moment she'd tried to weaponize. When the song ended, he guided her back toward her table, thanked her quietly, and walked away like nothing happened. Nadia returned to her seat with a smile that looked like it might crack her teeth. And then she did something I didn't expect. She stood up again. She walked straight toward me, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with anger she was trying to disguise as happiness. She leaned in, close enough that her perfume choked me, and whispered, "What did you do?" I met her gaze and said softly, "I didn't do anything. You did." Her eyes glittered. "You humiliated me." "You were trying to humiliate me," I whispered back. "At my wedding." Nadia's mouth tightened. "I was joking." "No," I said. "You were planting a story." She stared at me like she couldn't believe I'd said it out loud. Then, louder, with people watching, she smiled and said, "I'm so happy for you," and hugged me hard, too hard, like she wanted to bruise me through lace. That's where I'm going to pause the story for a second, because in that moment I genuinely didn't know if I'd won anything or if I'd just started a war. Nadia is the kind of person who doesn't throw a punch in public. She hides a blade inside a joke and makes you bleed while everyone laughs. The crush on Marco line wasn't random. That was strategic. She wanted to dirty the happiest day of your life with doubt. Not because she cares about Owen. Not because she cares about truth. Because she cannot tolerate you being the center of warmth without trying to dim it. Marco stepping in was honestly the cleanest possible counter. Not dramatic. Not cruel. Just a redirect that stole the oxygen from her little fire. And I respect him for keeping it to one song. That's the difference between saving someone and showing off. He did it for you, not for attention. Owen also deserves credit because a lot of partners would have reacted emotionally to Nadia's attempt at sabotage. He didn't. He trusted you. He stayed beside you. That matters, especially when someone is trying to wedge doubt into your relationship on a day when you're already stretched thin. Your parents, I'm sorry, but they're weak in the specific way that enables someone like Nadia. They've spent years rewarding her bad behavior by asking everyone else to be the bigger person. That's not peacekeeping. That's outsourcing responsibility to the most reasonable child until the unreasonable one becomes a monster in a pretty dress. And you? You finally treated Nadia like a real threat instead of a difficult personality. That's not petty. That's survival. If someone tries to sabotage your wedding, you don't owe them gentleness. You owe yourself protection. Update. So the wedding night didn't end with Nadia storming out or slapping someone or getting dragged away by security. Real life rarely wraps things up that neatly. What happened was quieter, and somehow that made it worse. After Nadia's toast got interrupted and redirected, the rest of the reception continued, mostly. People danced, ate cake, took photos. My friends rallied around me in that subtle way women do when they sense something was off. Claire kept appearing at my side with a glass of water and a look that said, "I've got you." Owen didn't leave my orbit. But Nadia stayed. She stayed smiling. She stayed performing. She also started working the room. I didn't notice at first, because I was pulled into a million little moments. Older relatives wanting photos, co-workers congratulating me, someone's drunk uncle insisting on telling Owen a story. But then I started catching pieces of conversation that made my skin prickle. At one point, my cousin Maya came up to me and said, "Hey, are you okay? Nadia said you were really stressed, and she's worried you're going to have a panic attack." I blinked. What? Maya shrugged, uneasy. "She was just telling people to be gentle with you. That you've been overwhelmed lately." Overwhelmed. Panic attack. Gentle. It was a new angle. Nadia wasn't trying to make me look foolish anymore. She was trying to make me look unstable. Later, one of Owen's friends, someone I barely know, said, "No hard feelings about Marco being here, yeah?" and laughed like it was a joke. My stomach sank. I realized Nadia hadn't dropped the Marco thing. She'd just moved it into whispers. I found Owen near the bar and told him what was happening. I expected him to get angry. Instead, he went still, which is scarier. He said, Okay. We're not going to let her poison this. He walked with me to the DJ booth and, very calmly, asked the DJ to keep Nadia away from the mic for the rest of the night. Then he asked the coordinator to make sure Nadia didn't have access to the photo slideshow queue. Practical. Controlled. It made me love him in a way that felt almost painful. But Nadia noticed. Of course she did. She cornered my mother near the bathrooms. I saw it from across the room. Nadia's hands moving, her face bright, my mother's posture shrinking. Then my mother came to me, eyes glossy, and said, "Can you please just talk to her? She feels attacked." I stared at my mother like she'd asked me to apologize to a person actively trying to light my life on fire. Attacked. I repeated. She said you set her up, my mother whispered. That you brought Marco to humiliate her. I looked past my mother to Nadia, who was watching us, smiling softly like she was the victim. My throat tightened. Here's the thing. In my family, the narrative always bends toward Nadia. If Nadia is upset, the assumption is that someone hurt her. If I'm upset, the assumption is I'm being dramatic. Nadia has always been better at suffering publicly. So, I did something that felt terrifyingly adult. I stopped trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding me. I took Owen's hand, walked straight over to Nadia, and said, quietly, "We need to talk." Nadia's smile widened. "Of course," she said, sweet as poison. "Are you okay? You look pale." "Stop," I said. Her eyes flashed. "Stop what?" "Stop whispering that I'm unstable," I said. "Stop suggesting Marco being here means anything. Stop trying to rewrite what you just did." Nadia's expression shifted into offended innocence, so fast it was almost impressive. "I was joking," she said. "You're being so intense right now." Owen's voice cut in, calm, firm. "Nadia, you told a room full of people that Layla had a crush on Marco. On our wedding night. That's not a joke." Nadia's cheeks flushed. "Oh my God, Owen, it was a line," Owen said. "A line you wanted to land. It didn't." Nadia's eyes flicked around, checking who was watching. She lowered her voice. "You two are being ridiculous," she hissed. "You think you're so perfect." I surprised myself by laughing once, short and humorless. "No," I said. "I think you're predictable." That made her face harden. "You've always been jealous of me," she spat. The sentence was so backward it almost made me dizzy. "Jealous?" I whispered. "Of what?" "Of needing attention so badly you'll ruin your sister's wedding to get it." Nadia's eyes went glossy, and for a second I thought she might cry. Then she smiled again, cold. "Fine," she said. "If you want me to leave, I'll leave. And everyone will know exactly why." There it was. The threat. The hostage situation. If she left loudly, she'd be the wounded one, and I'd be the monster. Owen leaned closer and said, quietly, "You can stay. You can dance. You can eat cake. But you will not make another comment about Marco, and you will not speak to our guests about Layla's mental health. If you do, we will ask you to leave." Nadia stared at him like she couldn't believe a man was setting a boundary with her. Then she laughed, high and fake. "Wow," she said. "Okay. Message received." She walked away. For the rest of the night, she behaved. Not because she suddenly grew a conscience, because Owen had made it clear there would be consequences that couldn't be spun into sister drama. She could make me look dramatic. She couldn't make Owen look dramatic without revealing herself. The next morning, on about 4 hours of sleep, I woke up to a text from Nadia. "I hope you're happy. You finally got everyone to see me as the villain." I didn't respond. My mother called later. She said, "Nadia is devastated. She says Marco said something horrible to her while they danced." My stomach tightened. "What did he say?" My mother hesitated. She said he told her, "You're not the main character tonight." I stared at the wall, suddenly exhausted down to my bones. Because that was it. That was the entire problem, boiled down into one sentence. And if that one sentence shattered Nadia's night, it wasn't because it was cruel. It was because it was true.
continuing the story to the end.
2 days after the wedding, Owen and I were eating leftover cake straight from the box like gremlins, still half laughing about how the florist accidentally packed us 3 extra centerpieces. It felt soft and normal, the way newlywed mornings are supposed to feel. Then my phone rang. It was my aunt, the one who always speaks like she's announcing a weather alert. "Layla," she said, "your sister is telling people you invited Marco to your wedding because you're still in love with him." I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth. Owen's eyes snapped to mine. "What?" I said. "She's saying you tried to make her jealous," my aunt continued, like she was reporting traffic. "And that Owen is naive." My body went cold. I looked at Owen, expecting anger, expecting hurt. He just looked tired. "Okay," Owen said quietly when I told him. "So, we're going to shut this down."
"How?"
I asked, voice small. Owen reached for my hand. "With truth," he said, calmly. That afternoon, Owen called Marco. I didn't listen to the conversation, but I heard Owen's tone, measured, respectful. When he hung up, he said, "Marco is willing to back you up if you want." I hated that it had come to this. I hated that my wedding had become a rumor factory. But I also felt something firm settle in my chest. I was done letting Nadia control the narrative through whispers. So, I did something I never do. I addressed it directly. I sent a message in the family group chat.
Short. Clear. No dramatiquezas. No begging.
"Hi everyone. I've been told there are rumors going around about Marco being invited to the wedding. Marco was invited because he and Owen work in the same industry circle, and we did not build our guest list around old relationships. Nadia's toast included an untrue comment about me having a crush on Marco. That comment was inappropriate, and it's why the mic was taken away. Please stop spreading false stories about my marriage." My hands shook when I hit send. My heart hammered like I'd just jumped off something high. The replies came fast. My aunt, "Thank you for clarifying." My cousin Maya, "Love you. Sorry this even needs to be said." My mother, "Layla, why would you say this in the group? Call me." And then Nadia, "Wow. So you're really doing this. On purpose. You're obsessed with making me look bad." It was almost comical how she couldn't resist proving my point. I didn't reply to her. I texted my mother separately. I said it because it's true. That night, Nadia posted a vague story online about family betrayal and people who can't handle a joke. A few of her friends commented supportive things. I didn't engage. Owen didn't engage. Claire sent me a screenshot and said, "She's spiraling. Let her." And then something unexpected happened. My father called. My dad and I don't have the kind of relationship where he calls to chat. When he calls, it's serious. I answered with my stomach clenched. "Layla," he said, voice low. "Your mother told me what happened. The real version, not Nadia's." I waited, holding my breath. He exhaled. "It was wrong," he said. "What she did? At your wedding?" My eyes stung so fast it surprised me. "Dad," I whispered. "I told her," he continued, "that she owes you an apology." My throat tightened. And she got angry," he said. "She said you're turning everyone against her." I let out a shaky laugh that was almost a sob. "I didn't turn anyone against her," I said. "She did." "I know," my father said, and there was something heavy in his voice, like regret. "I should have stopped this years ago." That sentence, "years ago," was the closest thing I'd ever heard to my father acknowledging the pattern. Nadia didn't apologize. Not really. She sent me a text a week later. "Sorry if you were offended." Which is not an apology. It's a shrug in sentence form. But the bigger change wasn't Nadia. It was me. Because for the first time, my family saw Nadia push too far in a room full of witnesses, and I didn't scramble to cover it. I didn't swallow it and smile for harmony. I let it be seen. And Owen, my husband, watched me choose myself in real time, and he didn't flinch. He stood beside me like it was normal to protect your wife from her own family, which sounds sad until you realize it's actually beautiful. Marco sent me one message after everything. I'm glad your night didn't get ruined. Congrats again. That was it. No drama.
No lingering weirdness.
Just decency. The last thing I'll say is this. Nadia didn't steal my wedding. She tried. She tested the doors. She reached for the mic. But she didn't get what she wanted. Because I stopped handing it to her. Nadia is exhausting in the way only certain family members can be, because she knows exactly where the soft spots are and she treats them like buttons to press. Her goal was never a funny toast. Her goal was to stain the day, to slip a little doubt into Owen's mind, to make you feel small in a room where you were supposed to feel cherished, and then to walk away with plausible deniability. It was a joke. People like Nadia love jokes because jokes are knives with handles. She can stab, then offer you the handle and act like you're crazy if you bleed. What makes Nadia particularly awful is her ability to pivot. When the public embarrassment didn't land, she switched to the concerned sister narrative, telling people you're overwhelmed, hinting at panic attacks, implying instability. That's not just petty. That's character sabotage. It's the kind of thing that can damage your relationships long-term because it plants the idea that you're unreliable. She deserved to have the mic taken. She deserved to be redirected. And honestly, she deserved to hear, "You're not the main character tonight," because that sentence is basically the truth she's been dodging her entire life. Marco, weirdly, comes out of this looking like the most emotionally mature person in the room.
He didn't grandstand.
He didn't turn your wedding into his moment. He did one clean, controlled move that saved you from a public mess and then disappeared back into the crowd like a normal human. That's what real support looks like. Quiet, effective, not performative. Owen is the unsung hero here. A lot of spouses would have gotten caught in the trap Nadia laid, defensive, hurt, suspicious. Instead, he treated it like what it was, an attack. He didn't demand you fix your sister. He didn't make your family drama your solo burden. He set boundaries like a grown man who understands that marriage means building a home that doesn't include uninvited chaos. And you finally stopped being the family shock absorber. You didn't scream. You didn't throw wine. You didn't win by humiliating Nadia back. You won by refusing to let her write the story. That's the part that matters. Because Nadia will keep trying this in different forms: birthdays, holidays, pregnancies, promotions. The only thing that stops people like her is consistent consequence and a total lack of access to your peace. You started that at your wedding. Keep going.